The key still fit the lock. That's the first thing that got me. 20 years this house sat empty, and my grandfather's old brass key turned in that lock like the door was just waiting on me to come home. I pushed it open, and the smell hit first. Damp, plaster, mouse. That particular sweetness old wood gets when the roof's been leaking so long the framing's given up trying to stay dry. Water stains ran down the parlor walls like somebody'd been crying against them for 2 decades. My family said, "Tear it down." Every one of them. Said the foundation was shot, said the roof was a total loss, said a builder in his right mind would bulldoze it and start clean. And they had a point. On paper, this house was worth less than the cost of hauling it away. But this is the house my grandfather built with his own hands in 1938. This is where I learned to hold a chisel, where I spent every summer from age 6 till the day I got my own truck. So I'm going to show you the whole year it took me to bring her back. Roughly 74,000, 12 months, and about 100 moments where I wondered if my family was right and I was the fool. She's got good bones, though. I could feel it standing in that doorway. The floor didn't give under my boots the way a dying house does. Let me show you. My grandfather, Earl Mercer, built this place in 1938. He was a carpenter like his father before him, like me after. Bought 2 acres off a dairy farmer for next to nothing during the tail end of the Depression and put up a story-and-a-half farmhouse over one long summer and fall. He didn't have money for anything fancy. What he had was time, skill, and old-growth timber you can't buy anymore at any price. Post and beam frame, joined with wooden pegs, not a structural nail in the skeleton of her. Hemlock and white pine cut within 20 miles of where it stands. My grandmother lived here till 1991. After she passed, my uncle held on to it, meaning to fix it up someday. Someday never came. The taxes got paid, the mowing didn't, and the house just sat there getting rained on for 20 years while the family argued about what to do with it. 2 years ago, my uncle passed and it came to me. Nobody else wanted it. They saw a liability. I saw the porch where my grandfather taught me to sharpen a chisel on a wet stone till the edge would shave the hair off my arm. So I moved my tools in and got to work. First thing you do with a house like this, you got to find out what you're actually dealing with. And that means opening her up. The demolition on a rescue job isn't like a regular demo. You're not swinging a sledge, you're peeling. Careful like a surgeon, because you don't know yet what's junk and what's a 100-year-old miracle you'd be a criminal to throw out. I started with the parlor ceiling, where the worst water damage was, pulled down the plaster and lath by hand, one section at a time, and got a face full of 20 years of dead insulation and mouse nest. Not pleasant. But behind it, right up against the roof leak, I found the truth. The rot was bad. Worse than I feared in that one corner. The roof had been leaking over the northeast bedroom for probably 15 years, and when water sits that long, it finds the framing and it eats. 2 rafters were spongy. I could push my thumb clean into them right up to the knuckle. The wall plate under them had turned to what we call punk wood, soft as a wet sponge, dark and stringy. That corner of the house was quietly failing and had been for a long time. Now here's where it gets interesting. I traced that rod expecting it to run the whole length of the wall. Braced myself for a $20,000 problem, maybe worse, but it stopped 2 feet in. The wood went from soft to hard as iron. My grandfather had used old-growth hemlock, and old growth doesn't rot the way the fast-grown lumber they sell you today does. You count the rings on a piece of his framing, there's 40-50 rings across a board that's 5 inches wide. The grain's so tight the water can barely find a way in. So the damage that would have taken out half the framing in a modern house was contained to about 6 feet of one corner. Somebody built this right the first time. My grandfather bought good wood, and it saved his house 40 years after he died. I sat on the subfloor a while just thinking about that. You don't get lessons like that on a job site. You get them from a dead man's choices. The rest of the demo told the same story over and over. The kitchen was a mess, cosmetically layers of linoleum and a drop ceiling somebody added in the 70s, acoustic tile stained brown, ugly as sin. But under 3 floors of vinyl glued down over tar paper, I found the original wide plank pine, 10 and 11 inches wide, boards you flat out cannot buy today at any lumber yard in this country, scarred, paint splattered, gorgeous. And in the wall between the kitchen and the pantry, when I pulled the last of the plaster, I found my grandfather's pencil, his handwriting. He'd written the date on a stud, the way carpenters have always done, a little note to nobody. An E. Mercer, Octa 1938, 80-some years waiting in the dark for somebody to open that wall. I'm not ashamed to tell you I had to step outside for a minute and stand in the yard. I tallied the real damage that first week. on a legal pad at the kitchen table like he probably did. The rotted corner, the whole roof, which was a total loss, every shingle, the shot electrical, a foundation that needed serious help in one spot. Bad, but not tear it down. Bad, about $74,000 of work against a house that was priceless to me and worthless to everybody else. Structure's where a rescue lives or dies. You can put a pretty kitchen in a house that's falling over, but she'll still be falling over. And in 5 years, the cracks tell on you. So before anything pretty, I went after the bones. The foundation first. Grandpa's cellar was fieldstone, stones stacked and mortared the way they did it before. Poured concrete was common out here. Every stone in that wall he carried and set by hand. Over 80 years, the mortar had crumbled back to sand, and one section of the northeast corner, right under all that roof rot, had started to bow inward, maybe 2 inches. Water, again. Water's always the enemy. It froze and thawed behind that stone for 80 winters and pushed it in a hair at a time. I'm going to be straight with you. I thought hard about jacking the whole house and pouring a new concrete foundation. That's the textbook answer, and any engineer would sign off on it. But that's $40,000 by itself, and it would have meant tearing out the very thing that made her hers, that stone my grandfather laid. So instead, I did what he would have done. I repointed the stone by hand, chipped out the dead mortar with a cold chisel, raked the joints back a good inch to fresh stone, wet it down, and packed in new lime mortar. Not modern Portland cement, mind you, lime, because it flexes and breathes the way the old work does, and Portland would have been too hard and cracked the stone. Worked around the whole cellar that way, stone by stone. Took me 9 days on my knees in the dark, and my back still hasn't forgiven me. Then I dug out that one bowing corner from the outside, poured a proper concrete footing, and set new steel against the stone to stop the movement for good. Best of both worlds, old stone kept, weak point cured. About $9,000 all in versus the $40,000 to rip it out. Then the framing. I cut out the 6 feet of rotted rafters and wall plate, and I scarfed in new timber. A scarf joint's an old way of splicing 2 beams end to end, a long, angled cut so the load carries across the seam instead of just butting up. Now, matching a new stick to old growth is a fool's errand strength-wise. The new stuff just isn't as strong, pound for pound, so I overbuilt it, doubled the rafters, sistered them tight, and put in a real ridge beam my grandfather never had, because in '38, they didn't always bother with one on a house this size. She's stronger up top now than the day he finished her. Here's my honest mistake, and it's a good one to tell on myself. When I ran a level across the second floor, I found the whole house had settled about 1.25 inches toward that bad corner over the decades. My first instinct was to jack it dead level, the way you would a new build, so I set steel posts and screw jacks in the cellar and started cranking, slow, a quarter turn a day, the way you're supposed to. 3 days in, I heard the plaster in the front hall start to crack, that little tick and pop of it letting go. And I stopped and I thought about it. This house had settled into her shape over 80 years. All her joints, her trim, her door casings, every one of them had found peace at that gentle slope. Forcing her level was going to tear her apart to fix a problem nobody could even see or feel walking through. That one was on me for not thinking it through before I touched the jacks. So I backed them off, quarter turn at a time, slow as I'd raised them. Stabilized her right where she wanted to be, shimmied and blocked so she'd move no further. Sometimes the job isn't making it perfect, it's knowing when. Perfect is the enemy of a house that's been honest for 80 years. I lost about 600 in cracked plaster learning that. Cheap lesson, all things considered. Once the bones were sound, I could think about the guts. And the guts of this house were 100% original, which is a polite way of saying dangerous. The wiring was knob and tube from 1938. Cloth insulation crumbling to dust when you touched it. Beautiful craftsmanship. Genuinely, the old electricians ran it neat as a pinstripe suit. Every run straight and true. Ceramic knobs spaced even as piano keys. But it's got no ground, and after 80 years, the cloth's gone brittle, and that's a house fire waiting on a bad day and an overloaded circuit. So all of it came out, and I ran a completely new electrical service from the pole, new 200-amp panel where the old 60-amp fuse box had been, all new circuits home run back to it. Proper grounding, arc fault breakers in the bedrooms, the way code wants now. About 80,500 with the panel and the service upgrade. I coiled up a length of the original knob and tube and kept it, though, a couple ceramic knobs still on it. Gonna frame it and hang it in the cellar stairs. That's respect for the man who did it right for his time. The plumbing was mostly gone to begin with. The old galvanized pipe rusted shut, so that was easier. No heartbreak in tearing it out. New PEX supply lines, new drains, and here's a decision I want to explain. I put the new bathroom right where the old one was, up over the kitchen. That keeps all the wet rooms stacked, one on top of the other, and the plumbing runs short and straight down to the cellar. Short runs mean fewer joints, and fewer joints mean fewer leaks in 10 years when nobody's looking. That's why old houses put the bath where they did. They weren't dumb. They just didn't have the budget for waste, and it turns out thrift and good building are usually the same thing. Then the insulation, and this is where Vermont started leaning on me hard. It was late October by now. The maple's already bare. The house had zero insulation in the walls, none at all. Just plaster and air gap and old wood. First hard frost came, and I was working in a house colder inside than out, breath showing, fingers stiff on the tools. I dense-packed cellulose into the wall cavities, blown in tight through holes I drilled up high. Packed so hard it can't ever settle and leave a cold gap at the top the way loose fill does. But I kept her breathable, and that matters more than folks know in an old post and beam. If you wrap one of these houses up airtight in plastic and foam, the moisture that wood's always giving off has got nowhere to go, and you'll rot her from the inside out in a decade. New house rules don't always fit an old house. You gotta let her breathe. So no vapor barrier sealed up tight, just good, honest cellulose that'll wick a little moisture and give it back. I got the insulation done in a new propane furnace running the week before Thanksgiving. First night the house held heat. I slept there on a cot in the parlor. Coldest it got outside was 4 below zero. Inside, 68 degrees, quiet, the furnace ticking soft in the cellar. First time that house had been properly warm in 20 years. I lay there listening to her, and it was a good night. Maybe the best one of the whole year. Then came my favorite part, the finishes. This is where 30 years of doing this shows, or it doesn't. And I had a rule for myself on this house, wrote it on that same legal pad. Nothing new that an old thing could still do. Save the old wherever the old could be saved. Those wide pine floorboards I found under the linoleum, I pulled every one of them up, numbered each on the back with a marker so they go back down in the same order, in the same spot, and cleaned 80 years of paint and glue and tar off the undersides, relayed them over new subfloor, tight, face-nailed with cut nails like the originals. Then I sanded them just enough to see the grain coming up, not enough to erase the wear. You can still see where my grandmother's chair scraped a little arc in the floor by the window. Where she sat, I left that. That's not damage, that's a life lived in one spot. Refinishing those floors cost me about $2,800 in my own labor, sandpaper, and oil finish against maybe $14,000 for new wide plank pine that wouldn't have had a single true thing about it. The kitchen I built from scratch, but built to belong, not to show off. Simple painted cabinets, shaker doors, frame and panel, the kind of plain, honest work Grandpa would have recognized and probably built himself. I hung the doors on butt hinges, not the hidden kind, because hidden hardware would have been a lie in a house like this. I put in a soapstone counter because soapstone's what they had up here, quarried right in Vermont, and it wears soft and gray and only gets better as you nick it and oil it. About $4,200 for the stone, cut and set. Worth every dollar, and it'll outlive me. And then the piece, the heart of the whole house. In the parlor, there was a built-in cabinet my grandfather made, floor-to-ceiling, glass doors up top and deep drawers below. Water had gotten to it from that leak. The finish was black, gone to alligator skin, one glass door was busted out, and the bottom drawers had swelled shut and split their fronts. Everybody who saw it said, "Pull it out, it's ruined, start clean." It wasn't ruined, it was just tired. I took it apart the way he put it together, and that alone told me everything about the man. Hand-cut dovetails on every single drawer, tight as the day he cut them. No nails anywhere a joint could do the work instead. He'd signed the back of it, faint pencil under the black E.M. I spent 3 full weeks on that cabinet, more time than I gave the whole kitchen. Stripped the dead finish by hand, no power tools near it. Steamed the swelled drawers loose over a kettle till the wood relaxed and slid free. Cut a new pane for the broken door out of old wavy glass I found at a salvage yard 2 towns over, $11 for a sheet of it, the Ripley kind you can't get new. Then I rubbed the whole thing out with boiled linseed oil and paste wax, coat after coat, till the grain came back up out of the dark like a photograph developing. When I stood it back against the wall, it looked just like it does in a photo I have of my grandmother standing next to it in 1952, apron on, hand resting on the top. Same cabinet, same light coming through the wavy glass. That's the heart of this house. Everything else I built around keeping that. So let me walk you through her now that she's done and the tools are packed. You come in the front door, and the hall's bright for the first time in decades, plaster patched and skim-coated and painted a warm white that goes gold in the afternoon. The original stairs still there with the worn treads, and I left them worn because feet made those hollows over 90 years, and I'm not about to sand a family off the stairs. Into the parlor, and there's the cabinet, glass doors catching the light off those wide pine floors. A wood stove where Grandpa's old one used to sit on a new hearth of Vermont slate. The water-stained walls that made everybody say, "Tear it down," gone, sound and dry, and warm to the touch. Back to the kitchen, the heart of most days. Soapstone counter, painted cabinets, that 11-inch pine underfoot glowing. And if you know where to look, the stud where he wrote his name in October of 1938 is behind a little hinged panel I framed right into the wall. You can swing it open and see his hand, his pencil. E. Mercer. I wasn't about to cover that up forever behind plaster. That mark stays reachable as long as this house stands. The whole thing came to right about $74,000 in 1 year of my life. New foundation work, new roof, new wiring, new plumbing, new heat, new insulation, new kitchen and bath, and under all that, new the same house my grandfather built with his hands in one long Depression summer. They told me it had cost less to tear it down. Maybe it would have, but you can't buy back a thing once it's in the landfill, and you sure can't buy back a pencil mark from 1938 or the little arc a woman's chair wore into a pine floor. Yes, somebody built this right the first time. My grandfather did. My whole job this year was just to not be the guy who ruined it. Standing here now, I think I managed that much. She's warm tonight, roof's tight, floors are solid, and there's a light on in a window of a house that sat dark for 20 years. That's enough for me. More than enough. Next one's a different animal. Entirely down the road a few miles, there's an 1890s church somebody turned into a barn back in the 40s and then just walked away from roofs caved in on one whole side, sky coming right through it, and there's a bell still up in the tower. Nobody's rung since Eisenhower was president. Everyone says tear it down. Come see what I find in the walls of that one. I'll see you there.